What's up, guys? This is Justin from the Board Game Losers, and today I don't have an unboxing. Today I don't have a gameplay or anything of that nature. Today I've got something a little bit different. This conversation was born out of a recent Kickstarter from Stronghold Games called Ares Expedition. It is the little cousin, I guess, if you want to say, of Terraforming Mars. And there was a lot of backlash over, and I say this as a backer because I was upset too, a lot of backlash over how they handled the Target release. Now, you know, there's people on both sides. There's good points on both sides. There's not great points on both sides. Wherever you stand's wherever you stand. I respect that. But it did bring up an interesting question, and that was, if a publisher, in this case Stronghold for Terraforming Mars, if a publisher makes a misstep, in this case, again, Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition, if they make a misstep, how much of that should be transferred to what we think about the game? In other words, and I do have notes, believe it or not, I usually don't do this, but I do have notes. If a game is good, and this is probably what I'm going to title the video, if the game is good, shouldn't that be enough? Or should that be enough, I guess I should say. So, when this happened, right, I mean, I was a backer and I was kind of a little upset, but it made me think of Terraforming Mars. It also made me think of Terraforming Mars. It also made me think of another game that I got recently that I love. I think is a great game. Let me move my notes. There we go, where I can see mostly what's going on the screen. And that is Dungeon Crusade. Grievous Games Unlimited. First game was a backer way back when. Took several years. Lots of issues. I don't think I've done a review or anything of this. I should do that. I haven't got to really play it because it's a huge game. The game itself is a really good game. I really enjoy playing Dungeon Crusade. But a lot of that initial angst that I have, and still have, to be honest, of a lot of things, have less to do with the game and more to do with the publisher. So the question is, if a game is good enough, you know, is that enough? So, things that I want to talk about, right? So this is kind of what's been going in my head and kind of the process that I'm going through. I don't know. I'm just going to go ahead and, like, spoiler warning here at the end. I don't know that I've formed a concrete opinion, but I'll tell you where I'm headed and get my thoughts out there, and you can tell me what your thoughts are, and, you know, we'll compare notes and see. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe there's something you're missing. Maybe you know, we all have different ideas, so let's just share them. So, I think there's three biases that exist by default for pretty much every game that we play as a gamer. Theme. People are turned on or turned off by theme. If you really love fantasy stuff and you hate sci-fi, you take a game that has the exact same mechanics, basically the same mechanics, and you put theme X on it, say fantasy, that's your thing. You take the same game with the same mechanics, put a science theme on it, and then you go, science theme is crap and the fantasy game's great. That happens. I mean, I definitely have themes that I'm more drawn to than other things. The second thing is mechanics. Hey, maybe I really like dice. Maybe I want something that's really heavy in dice, and a game is maybe a good game. It's just not heavy in dice, and I'm going to automatically, when somebody's like, well, what do you think about this game? If it's not dice heavy, I may go, it's not a very good game. Is it really not a good game, or is it just that it's not a game for me? I think that's a bias that we have. And then space exposure. Basically what I say about that is, how much do we hear about this game? Are reviewers covering it? Is it from a big name? Is it from an expansion or set in the same universe as another big game? We automatically, I think, a lot of times put less weight on games from first-time designers and smaller companies, and we say, well, they can't do what the big guys do. And I mean, they definitely have their struggles, right? They don't have as many resources, but I think that really in the end, if the game should be set apart for what a game is set apart for, and the game in and of itself is good, we shouldn't bias ourselves based on that game's publisher being a smaller publisher if the game is great. So those are kind of three, what I thought of big areas that pretty much I think we all would agree are very common areas that we have biases in. And I think that those can really affect our perception of the game. Whether we played it, I mean, the reality is that there's a lot of times when I look at a game and I say, I've never played it, but I'll almost have an opinion on it just based off those three things. But again, it goes back to the question is that really fair to the game? Are we fair to the game? Are we shortchanging ourselves at the game? Another good example that Kevin brought up tonight when we were playing, we played in Gloomhaven a little while ago. And when we were playing, he was talking about a game that he kickstarted and some issues that are potentially happening with it that he's reading. But he mentioned After the Empire. That's another one that I've got. You've seen it. I think you've seen it on the channel. If not, I need to fix that because it's a really good game. But, right, I say that, right? It's a good example. I say that. I say it's a really good game. Well, he went and looked because he's got a game by Gray Fox as a publisher, right? And he's back to one, and there's some issues with it. And, if you go back and look consistently at the Gray Fox as a company, the Gray Fox from a few years ago and the Gray Fox now don't seem to be caring as much about quality, about customer service, about a lot of things. I mean, I was kind of burnt a little bit of that with Reavers of Midgard because of the linen finish on the cards. I mean, yeah, you can argue that it doesn't affect gameplay, but if you said you're going to put linen finish on it and you missed it, that's not my fault. But they never went back and fixed that because it didn't affect gameplay. The game is great. I've played it several times. I enjoy the game, and especially initially, I kind of would say I had a little bit of bias, and it wasn't as good because every time I would look at the cards, I'd go, "Well, crap! I could have had a linen finish, but they screwed us out of the linen finish." So I guess my point I'm saying is it definitely does affect our perception. Let's see here. Yes. So, based on Dungeon Crusade, Terraforming Mars, I essentially want to go through a list of the good things about each and the bad things about each, just to give you kind of an example of the game itself. That are things about the games, I feel like, less about the games, more about the game itself and less about the publisher. But keep in mind that I couch this with the caveat that in both of these cases, Dungeon Crusade I've played. So that's a pretty good example. Ares, I have not received, nor have I played. So, yeah, there's some things, some expectations, and it'll be interesting to go back, after I get Ares and play it a couple times, get a couple more plays of Dungeon Crusade in, where I can say, okay, just strictly on the game, this is how I feel. But let's just talk about the good and bad of each game. Dungeon Crusade. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes here. Yeah. So, let's stick with that now. Yeah. Yeah, let's just stick with Dungeon Crusade. Dungeon Crusade I've actually played, so that's probably the better comparison. Things that are good about it. And some people are going to laugh when I say this, but it was years in the making. The guy, Roger Deering, that created this, is an extremely, extremely passionate guy. He wants to get everything right. He has a vision, and it's a huge vision, and he works very hard, lots of hours to make that vision come true. And I really believe that he thought as best he could about everything in this game, and I think that he had a vision, and the resultant game that we have, Dungeon Crusade, all right, Dungeon Crusade, is a really good game. It's a huge, huge dungeon crawl. If you want a dungeon crawl, I mean, this game is, I won't say it's the best dungeon crawl, but it's top 10 easy, top 5 for me easy, probably in the top 3 of a dungeon crawl, of all the ones that I've played and that I'm aware of. But when I look at this game, when I talk about this game, I kind of find myself diverging in 2 areas. When I talk about the game and the negative of the game, which you think about the game, you're playing the game. What is the game like? When I talk about the negatives to somebody and they ask me what I think, really, if I sit down and when I made this list, I was like, some of these things I say are negatives really aren't negatives about the game. It's about the publisher, which in this case was Grievous Games Unlimited, Roger, and the way that he does things, and less about the actual gameplay itself. So here's what I mean. As an example, the rulebook for Dungeon Crusade, oh my God, it's huge. It's 80 pages. Walls and walls and walls of text. It's a great game. And probably most of the rules are in there somewhere. It's very spaced out. The text, the way that the text is written is just like he talks, because he did this. And again, this goes back to the passion. He did basically all this himself. He did a lot of the graphics, not on the cards, but in the layout and stuff of the book. And it's just walls of text, and it is so, so hard to read. Now, there's some people that are like, well, I didn't have a problem with the rule book. There's always going to be people that love it, and then there's going to be people that hate it. If I went by most of the BGG posts that I saw, that people who were playing this game that have been waiting and actively pioneering for Roger and Grievous Games Unlimited for years, the vast majority, not everybody, right? I'm making a generalization. The vast majority of people were like, oh my God, this is just a wall of text. It's so hard to read. And getting through that rule book is a struggle, because everything's spread out. It's hard. It's walls and walls of text. Like, you can't just say, okay, I want to know everything about the monsters. Well, like, it's based on the phases, but he's got all the information about the phases split up in like 4 or 5 places, because it's like this general overview, and then a little bit like the 30,000 foot overview, then the 10,000 foot overview, then the 5,000 foot overview, and so you have a lot of this stuff repeated. Right, not repeated. You have some information in the 10,000 overview section, and then you have some information in the 30,000 overfoot view section, and then you get some information in the 5 foot section. So it's very hard to condense all that. Now, the text itself, not only is it long, it's not. So when you read a rule book, you have, and I don't even really know how to explain it, to be honest, but you have this idea of what a rule book, like rules, sounds like. It's not a conversation. It's a rule book. You're explaining the mechanics. Yeah, you may have some stuff about lore in there, but that's very separate from the mechanics and walking you through exactly how things are supposed to happen. That is not how this rule book is written. This rule book is written the way that Roger talks, and the way that Roger posts, and the way that Roger does his updates, which is extremely long paragraphs, talking over and over about a few of the new things and saying, to be honest, a lot of the same stuff he's already said. And if he doesn't use the word acclimated at least 30 times in every post, he's probably sick, because every video he says something to the effect of, we'll just get everybody acclimated to Dungeon Crusade, which is fine and great. You've had 5 years to do it. Now let's do it. And right. So But what does that have to do with the game? Like, the rule book is hard to read. So I can see you can kind of say that's about the game. But really, honestly, most of the biases that I have with the rule book, the issues that I have with the rule book, aren't that the rules aren't there, per se. Now, there's a few things missing. I mean, let's just be honest. There wasn't any markings on the boards for the setup for the dungeons. You just had to kind of like put them together and figure out how they matched each other. It was not clear in the book with the monster tokens for the chambers that were non-quest chambers supposed to be face up. There's several things that were clear and it have been admitted that they weren't clear in the rule book, that were just assumptions that were made that are not anywhere and are, after 5 years, should not have been issues that should have been clarified in the playtest group. Which, as much as I love the game, I'll just tell you, I think he needs another playtest group for this next book 2. I'm assuming he's going to do a book 2 at some point because that's called book 1, Genesis of Evil. Different playtest group, a professional that does a rule book, because that was an issue. That was a stumbling block. Having said that, most of the issues that I had with the rule book weren't that a specific this mechanic didn't work. It was those things like that. But that doesn't really have to do with the game. That's just the way Roger's personality was. Right? With Terraforming Mars, let's go to that. The issues that I had with Terraforming Mars is I was very upset that Stronghold was, screwing everybody by sending stuff to Target and not really being upfront about it. Now, eventually they apologized, sort of, after there's been this backlash. I mean, but at that point, is it really an apology, or is it just, oh crap, we got caught, we've got to put something out there? Because the real question will be, does it happen again? But, I mean, Terraforming Mars is a great game. I think Ares Expedition is going to be a great game. But I can say for sure that my initial thoughts about Ares Expedition, until I get it, have been somewhat clouded by Stronghold's actions. So, if I had to rate, again, I can't really do Ares Expedition because I don't have it, but Dungeon Crusade. If I had to rate Dungeon Crusade as a game on a 10-point scale, with 1 being the most atrocious game I've ever had, seen, or played, 10 being the most amazing game I've ever seen or played. If I'm being honest, the game itself, I would probably rate 8.5, 9 out of 10. I think it's one of the best games I own. Is it huge? Absolutely. Is it super hard to get to the table just because it takes like literally a 7-foot space with the way that it's built? And that's assuming that you don't have the Avalon Adventure board game out, and assuming that you don't have a place, you clear out a space to play the games of chance. Absolutely. Those are things that make it hard to get to the table. It takes a while to process everything. You have to play, really to play it. I won't say you have to, because Roger would argue that he said you can play however you want. But as designed, it's designed to play with 6 players. So you get 6 characters, and you have to manage a lot for those characters in the terms of equipment and all that stuff to play. But it's still a great game. It's still probably 8.5, 9 out of 10. When I look at the box, and if I factor in how I feel, not based on just the game, I would probably give the game a 6 out of 10 because of the issues that I've had with the rulebook, with the way Roger releases stuff, with the way he doesn't do things like the rules PDF that's been out there online for months, probably over a year, that is not searchable, that literally takes like 2 button clicks to make searchable, that he refuses to do. He's working on videos to show everything off that he's done videos 100 times for in the last 5 years. Anyway, those are the sorts of things that make it feel like a 6 out of 10, but it's really like an 8.5, 9 out of 10 game. So, is it fair to the game for me to say this game is a 6 out of 10? Is it fair for me to say, how did I put it? Is it fair to combine the game and publisher, I guess I should say publisher. Is it fair to combine the game and the publisher together to really talk about how good the game is? Because They're really kind of separate things. As many issues as I have with Dungeon Crusade, am I going to buy book 2? Yeah. If it had expansions when I got it, did I get everything? Absolutely. Did I get that knowing that it was going to be wordy, that I know that the rulebook probably was going to be a mess based on what I had seen from him? Yeah. But in the end, it's still a 8.5, 9 out of 10 game. And I feel like there's probably a lot of other titles in my collection that I do the same thing. That I look at that game and I say, that's a great game, but we'll go back to Ares, right? Ares Expedition. But Stronghold screws stuff up. Well, okay, Stronghold screws stuff up, but Fricks Games created Terraforming Mars. I forget who created Ares Expedition, but whoever created it, they did that independently of Stronghold, I believe. I hope. So the game itself may be really good, but the execution of getting the game to me via Kickstarter, COVID-19 stuff aside, and the way they handled their things so far on Kickstarter, the thing with Grey Fox, yeah, and that's another thing, right? So this is another point that Kevin brought up tonight that I guess I've kind of failed to mention. I got my copy of After the Empire like early on. I had no clue that there were issues with people not getting their copies and missing stuff, and there were a lot of unhappy people with the way Grey Fox did their fulfillment. And I mean, you can blame part of that on the fulfillment companies, but at the same time, I mean, you're the publisher, you're the one on the hook for it. There was a lot of upset people, and a lot of people did not rate the game, I feel like, the way that it probably should be rated based just on mechanics and content for that same reason. That Grey Fox Games kind of burnt them early in the process, and that affected how they thought about After the Empire. Stronghold Games burnt me early in the process. It affected the way that I thought about Ares Expedition. But is that really fair? If I had to choose, I would lean towards no, probably, because I think the game is separate. Once you have to ask the question, well, once you have the game, what's the game like? If the game's great once you have it, does the publisher, should what the publisher did affect that if it's a great game? Probably not. But at the same time, I'm sitting here looking at these two boxes going, like, I know that, right? But I don't feel that completely. So I don't know. I hope I haven't missed out on some games, some great games, by even, especially small publishers or first-time publishers, because of something like that. And I hope that the games that I do have in my collection that are even by larger groups that have burned people, because you get to a certain point and you're doing Kickstarters for millions of dollars, you can afford, if you don't sell 100 copies, you don't sell 100 copies, is it really hurting you? Probably not. Financially. But I hope I've not missed out on any great games because of that. So tell me what you think. Do you think that, do you find yourself doing that? Do you find it easy to kind of divest yourself of what the publisher does and focus solely on the gameplay and the mechanics? Or do you find yourself, maybe what the publisher did just kind of ruins the game, or at least devalues the game and your enjoyment and fulfillment of the game somehow? And how do you manage that? How do you, when the next one comes out, an expansion, a new game in the series, another game from the publisher, a totally different game but the same publisher, how do you manage that? How do you get past that, if that's been something that affects you in the past, so that you're not missing out on good games because you thought it wasn't very good and it turns out it was really a good game, or maybe even a good game, you thought, I'll pass, and it turned out to be a great game. And it was just because you were, looked at it and thought, well, that publisher is not going to do something great. It's a new title, et cetera, et cetera. So tell me what you think in the comments. I would be very curious. But, that came up, and I thought I would ask you guys what you think about it. I think it's a conversation worth having. And I don't know what the answer is because, on the one hand, probably for the most part, I would say, how would you tell Stronghold as an example? How do you tell Stronghold you don't appreciate that? You don't buy their product, right? That's money talks, right? You don't buy what they publish. But then at the same time, Fricks Games or whoever is publishing the content, their idea is great. The game itself is great. So if they go through a publisher and you don't buy it from the publisher, yeah, you're hurting the publisher, but you're also kind of screwing the designer, and that's really not right either. So I don't know. Hopefully you guys can help me sort this out. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and let's just think about it so that hopefully we won't be missing great games. That's all I have for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for subscribing and listening to me ramble for a hot however many minutes it's been at this point. If you like what we do on the channel, keep watching. Subscribe, thumbs up the videos. That definitely helps with the algorithm. I know we don't do a lot, and we're not necessarily consistent. We're trying to be a little more consistent. Now that Kevin's doing some things, I'm trying to get as much done as I can as well. So, and if you guys want to see anything, or you guys want to do something, if you guys want to do a game that we've covered, or you have an idea for a game that you'd like to play, that you'd like to do over a stream, or you just want to record a session with us so we can put it on YouTube, I'm down for that. This Board Game Losers origin really was just a game group of mine, and I've watched a couple other people online, Rob Oren probably being the prime one. Watched him just get out there and make videos for things that he loved, and that's what we're doing. We're just putting content out there for stuff we love. We hope you guys enjoy it. We just want to connect with you guys and play some cardboard. Get some cardboard to the table, whether it's physically, if you're in our area, or over Tabletop Simulator, or via stream. Hey, I live in the U.S., did a 4-hour stream. It's been a while ago, but I did a 4-hour stream with New Zealand for Wonder Cult of Barnacle Bay. So it can be done, no matter how far away you are, I promise. There was a 16-hour time difference, and we made it work. So we can make it work with you. But yeah, thank you guys for watching again. Thank you guys for subscribing. I am Justin from the Board Game Losers signing off, and I will see you, ladies and gentlemen, in the next video. Bye, guys.